This week I was planning on getting a lot of projects done, one of them being sealing the seam between the steel and the lead, an extremely important project, but sometimes projects go upside down.
When the bulb was poured and the mold cavity was filled up to the highest point of the bulb, there were 5 ports in the mold for filling or venting. So all 5 ports came up to the same level, and they left these barrels of lead that had to be cut off. There was also a small toe at the leading edge. I didn't want anything hanging from the boat that can catch detritus, so it had to go as well. Once it was off, I was curious what the steel buried in the lead looked like, but there was really nothing to see. The goal of this project is to seal the seam between the lead and the steel fin. I'm going to use Flex Epox by Total Boat, which is a very high strength and flexible epoxy. To make a fillet, I thickened it with silica. And then once I had the steel and lead cleaned up at the seam, I made the fillet in the corner using a Ziploc to dispense and a tongue depressor to shape the inside radius. Applying the fillet to the seam went really well, and the next step was to fiberglass the seam between the lead and the steel. To prepare the area, I had to do some grinding to clear the steel of any primer and corrosion and smooth the lead out on the bulb in the area that I'm fiberglassing.
Again, I really think you could do well as a low-cost dentist after this boat project is over. You wouldn't even have to purchase any new dental tools.
No, I would charge a lot. I am very expensive. The next step was to just get a coat of epoxy on the area. As part of this project to seal the corner, I need to laminate a few layers of glass from the lead to the steel. And what's really tricky about laminating to lead is it corrodes really quickly. If it's not abraded, cleaned, and coatings applied within just a few minutes of each other, the coating won't adhere. The plan was to get epoxy cured to the lead and steel, which I could sand later and laminate to. But it didn't work out as I'd hoped.
I came back into the tent this morning and I took my razor blade and just tried to peel up some of the epoxy that I applied yesterday, and it peeled right off. A lot of it does. And so I did something wrong applying that epoxy to the lead and to the fin. I'm worried that what I did was I waited too long before putting the epoxy onto the bare metal. Like I said, this stuff corrodes, especially the lead, like instantly. Well, not instantly, but it doesn't take very long for it to get a layer of corrosion on the surface. And so what I'm doing today is doing it section by section instead of doing the whole thing and then applying all the epoxy. So I'm doing it section by section, scuffing it, cleaning it, and then immediately getting the epoxy on it so that I'm not waiting more than 15 minutes to get epoxy on the lead especially.
I changed my strategy from attempt number 1 by brushing on Total Boat's high performance epoxy, and then I used a wire brush to kind of grind the epoxy into the lead. Then while the epoxy was still wet, I applied the fiberglass and vacuum bag before the end of the day. As I've said before, I really appreciate the slow cure high performance Total Boat epoxy for how slow it is, giving me lots of time for these very difficult laminations.
Okay, I'm ready to put the first tape on. Let's hope this works.
So how confident are you that this one will work?
I think I got my process down to where it will work better. I think there were a couple issues. First of all, I think I was allowing too much time for, like, lead corrodes so fast that even letting it sit shiny for 15 minutes was too long. I think I was letting it sit shiny for like half an hour. And so this time around, I sanded it cleaned it really good, and had epoxy on it all within like 10. I mean, the epoxy was on like 5 minutes after I had finished sanding it. I'm confident that that was one of the big problems from previous attempts. It's also warmer out today, and I'm gonna, as soon as this vacuum bag is on, I'm gonna just cook this tent. I think that will also be a big help. Just letting the epoxy set up under really like warm temperatures. And that's one side laminated, so we're gonna go get the other tape and get it on. This 6-ounce cloth is difficult to work with, especially in these big pieces like this. And putting plastic on both sides makes it so much easier to manipulate when you're putting it down, especially when you're, like I said, using this much at a time. I think that'll hold the lead on pretty good.
Ha ha ha. Don't you think you should vacuum bag it just to make sure it really holds the lead on?
Well, yeah, that was the plan. If we didn't vacuum bag it, then the lead would definitely fall off.
Yeah. Matt just made a joke, y'all, in case that wasn't obvious.
I thought it was a pretty good one.
This project took all day, and of course the most difficult part is at the end, getting a vacuum bag pulled onto the lamination. But eventually I had a good seal on the bag, and the heat was turned up in the tent for the rest of the night.
Okay, me and Alder want to see how it's going.
This is one of the more difficult laminations and vacuum bags that I've had to do, and I think it turned out really good. It seems as though my method of grinding, cleaning, and then putting epoxy down on the lead has worked, and I got a really good seal on the vacuum bag yesterday. I baked it. It was at 90 degrees all night last night, and so I'm very happy with how this turned out.
I spent way more time on this lamination than I'd hoped. 4 days to be precise. To lift my spirits, we decided to end the week on a high note with a satisfying little project. That's a sink you see there. From living full-time aboard a sailboat for 5 years, Yanni and I agreed with our friends Maya and Aladino of Sailing Magic Carpet that bigger sinks are better when you're living aboard and cooking every day. So we found the largest stainless steel sink that we could fit in the cabinet space below the counter for Duracell's Galley. So let's get it installed. First, I made a couple templates of the mounting surface for the sink, which will show where the outside of the flange will be and where the cutout will be. I got them placed where I like them and traced it onto the counter surface to get the hole cut. This is the perfect job for my track saw, which makes ultra precise and straight cuts. I'm sure everyone is very interested in how the sink will be mounted. The one I bought is what's called a dual mount or flush mount sink, which means that I can mount it such that the flange is flush to the surface of the counter. Undermounting was not an option because the counter isn't solid like a quartz counter. There's foam, fiberglass, wood veneers, and an epoxy top, so finishing the exposed edge would be a nightmare. Top mounting works, but there's the edge of the sink flange on top of the counter always catching stuff. So I made a routing template to route out the surface of the counter to the shape of the flange that is a bit deeper than the flange is thick, so I can shim up the sink to be flush with the counter. This routing was not super easy. It was messy, noisy, and I needed to be very careful not to go outside the perimeter of the flange. Even though I had a template, my bit and my router can wander a little.
This afternoon, we get to glue in the sink. I've got all my shims in place, so I actually routed out the area a little bit lower than where the sink would sit so that I could shim it up so that it's just perfectly flush with the countertop. I'm gonna use silicone, like an adhesive silicone, to bond in the sink and make it nice and watertight. I'm also going to clamp it down with some aluminum square tube.
Voila.
Almost.
Oh, come on, say it.
Well, like it's not in yet. It's not in yet. Okay, voila. So Yanni forced me to decide on a faucet. I don't know if anybody has recently just tried to buy a faucet, but there are a million plus one to choose from. So we got one picked out and we're gonna go install it, see how it looks in the boat.
Do you want to rephrase Yanni forced me to
You
pick
did,
out?
you
You made me
said,
sound very scary.
you said you must go find a faucet now that the sink is installed. And I did. Just for you. Ooh. Ah. We're really happy with how this turned out. I think this flush sink mount is very cool. You'll notice there's an extra hole here. This could be for a saltwater pump to save on fresh water, or I think what we're gonna do is a filtered water drinking faucet. It's just because we have a ton of water capacity on board.
think it's time that we come clean with our viewers. We haven't been entirely honest in this episode.
Yeah, it actually took me 3 attempts of applying epoxy to the bulb before it actually worked.
And we were so demoralized by it, we just decided to show 2 of the attempts.
We also didn't post a video last week because it just wasn't working out.
Okay, there you go. That's the truth. Thanks for watching, and see you next week.
We have a couple of Patreons to thank. First to Frank, who grew up sailing on a ton of different boats and now currently has a J28 that he sails and races on. He's teaching his family how to sail on it. And recently he got to charter an old America's Cup class boat, an Intrepid. And I'm extremely jealous that he got to do that. I would love to go do a charter like that one day. Also, thank you to Magnus, who is from Sweden, but he's been a windsurfer and sailor for a long time. Now he's landlocked in Botswana, but one day hopes to do his own sailboat rebuild one day. Thank you so much, of course, to everybody, our Patreons, our viewers, all of you for supporting us. And if you're interested in joining our Patreon community, you can find it at the Duracell Project on patreon.com.